I didn't let Grumpskin's attack deter me from my chance at a little inside living, and so started spending time over at Sandy's ledge whenever I could. It was complicated, though. A couple of times I detected the lurking hindwalker from the tree and had to abandon my social plans.
One time she was washing dishes and threw a sudsy cupful at me, missing wildly. And there were a few more scritch attacks, but I was wise to the short range of that weapon and was now untouchable. But remember when I only took a few butter cubes that first time? Must have seemed a bit odd for a stray who keeps complaining about his groaning gut hole. Well, now it paid off. You see, the hindwalker never even knew I'd raided her kitchen. They can't keep track of every cube, but they'll notice if you mine that gold lick down to the dish, or if you leave enough bite marks to remove any doubt it might have been a fork.
When hunting hidden finger food, you're always better off taking a full swipe rather than a partial bite, providing morsel size allows. If you want an example of what happens to nibblers, visit your local mousetrap. And if the gnar is still fresh, let me know. Of course, if you do plan on coming back for extra serves, moderation is key. Like I said, as a crazed-eyed kitten, it's normal to just panic chomp everything you find till your tongue strikes hard ground, with no thought for the mess or the future. But when you mature a bit, you should realize there can be bigger games at play in Gloomtown, and repeatable raids are some of them.
Watch the paw prints too, by the way. If you've gone meowfolking through a mud zone before an inside adventure, wipe your feet on some plant fur first. And so, because of my meticulous meowcraft, hunting without a trace, Sandy's hindwalker only thought I'd been up there birdwatching and didn't worry about her den. That meant the windows remained loose and unlatched and the butter uncovered, generally speaking, and therefore kept my precious gold lick mine open. Sure, a few times I butted into locked windows, but the security never lasted. If I'd gone and gorged that gold lick to the last, even if I got back into the kitchen another time, the hindwalker might have done something crazy like secure that butter with a silver lid. It's not quite the safe house they think it is. In an emergency, you can still shove it off the counter and crack that silver husk, though remember, bangers and smashers will have no mercy on you in there.
There's also a quieter solution to that puzzle I came up with a while back, but it only works when a sink is full of water. Turns out you simply push the tray in and the butter cubes float to the top to fish out at your convenience.
But make no mistake, even if you pull them off, both those options still give your hunt away to the resident hindwalkers, and so if you plan on returning for a regular raid schedule, the best thing is to mine that gold lick as modestly and cleanly as possible.
Obviously, there are times you have to strike hard and gory too. Don't get me wrong. I couldn't exactly be taking a leg at a time from the emerald treasure, hoping nobody noticed until they grew back. The only things that grow back on flappers are the feathers, and those things are like chewing rug tassels.
Anyway, Sandy got more comfortable with me after a while and started to settle down a little. She even picked up one of my cat habits, scratching her head with a foot, which is a much more powerful scratch than the forepaw style used by hindwalking people. It's the only way to go for a truly deep itch.
Those were really nice times, sitting up there with Sandy on our balcony stools. It was like we owned the place, and I almost felt like a flapper myself, so aloof on my perch, looking down on the street crawlers.
Unlike some crow, Sandy wasn't giving me that cocky look and yanking my tail out its socket, or strutting around thinking she's smarter than the whole neighborhood just because she figured out how a bin lid works.
You could also take a nap with her without a care. See, if she was a crow, you just couldn't do that because they like carcasses, as I said, and that includes cats. And how can you relax knowing if you appear dead tired long enough, your crow pal there will get the wrong idea, call his friends, and start pecking you apart? If they had a healthy day nap schedule, it would be one thing, but they never sleep in the day, those crows. Their beady, backstabbing eyes don't rest until the sun is truly sunk, scanning for sinister scores until the very last ray has been soaked by the clouds.
And so you just know the day will come when the crow friend will clamp that dirty beak on your dreaming tongue, wrenching it clean out your gums, then with the whole flock latching on, keep pulling to drag out your belly bag and gut windings with a few kidneys hanging off, like kids playing tug-of-war with a string of frankfurters from Carl's Cuts. And they're all pretty precious possessions of mine, Carl's frankfurters also. And even if you tried stuffing your tongue back in to call for some butcher backup, you'll soon see some sootwing carrying off your severed liquor to hide under the neighbor's roof tiles, and no one will fathom your screams. With a crow in that cage instead of Sandy, I'd have to sleep with one eye open, two ears standing, all claws extended and fanged jaws half-cocked. That's no way to run a friendship. Some might question whether I really was experiencing the proper inside up there with Sandy, since a window balcony is sort of like a boundary between two worlds, where the sordid scents of the street merge with homely fumes from a stovetop pot. I don't want to get into a whole philosophical debate about it, but what I can say is when you're prowling a kitchen counter at will and perching 2 stories up behind the railing, a pet bird beside you for mews and views, that's no outside adventure at the park pond. But yes, it's also true I didn't become a typical insider, a real house cat. And I never tried to. In fact, during this period, I made sure to avoid morphing into some overstuffed fur cushion.
And I wasn't gonna get myself wedged on a ledge so long I got cemented over like a gargoyle either. I think you know by now, being some ornament is not my lifestyle. I have to keep my claws carving, my tail swinging and my shadow licking bricks. But it was nice to have a haven from the backstreet bedlam for a while, when the prey is lying low and the hounds are howling close.
With the kitchen clear, I could come up here, gum some gold lick, encourage Sandy to escape her cage someday, and watch the world from the safety of a plush plant-soaked balcony.
Of course, it wasn't entirely carefree, because that kitchen window was a disaster waiting to happen, and still is. If nearby trees get roost with crows, they'll be sending daily raiding parties right through the whole region.
And the way Sandy's hindwalker left her windows open, and food lying around, she's just asking for it. One murky eyeball gets a clear view inside, and that's all it'll take. The flock will organize, be flying off with every egg in your nest, every fruit in your bowl, every cracker in your box. Crows will lever out all your front teeth just to get to your last mouthful. That's why I did my part and cleaned up any scraps, just to safeguard the area. Other than that, there was nothing much to be done. Hindwalkers could cut the trees down, but it would mean good old Morty wouldn't be able to visit. So it was one of those times where the crow risk had to be accepted.
If there was one other major criticism of Sandy's place, it was that it had a serious rodent problem. I'd never seen anything this bad before. Gnars were almost non-existent.
In fact, I'd say the situation was downright critical. All the residents had to do was leave more morsels out on the inside, away from crow spies, obviously. That would do the trick, especially a carcass or two in a bed or bathtub. I'm surprised the hindwalkers don't understand this. They'd be amazed how convenient it is to have a gnar colony right in their living space. Run out of food on a rainy afternoon? No need to go out shop stalking and get soaked through like a duck floater. Just reach down the back of the stove, snatch a few baby rats, and sizzle them up in a buttery pan. Or stuff a big one with kitty stew and bake until the ears go crispy.
Hindwalkers let their hatred of gnars get in the way of simple practicalities.
The only other suggestion I'd have for Sandy's place would be adding a fish tank or two. Nothing quite lights up a window like a fish tank, and not too deep. Easy on the water weeds too. They can really snag the hooks. As you can imagine, it wasn't like I didn't have any carnivorous thoughts about Sandy. Sitting there like she did, young and tender, it would be impossible not to. I'm sure even Sandy's owner had a few of those thoughts herself while she fired up the stove, maybe just mincing Sandy into a pie, or fattening her up for an emergency roast in case the ducks all fly away that year. And who knows, maybe she'd already had herself a sneaky taste, just clipping some of those red feathers off for a garnish, or bathing Sandy in soup for a moment to add that hint of Sandy bird flavor. Maybe Sandy actually got that red coat of hers from having so many beet soup baths. It would make sense. So sure, every time I visited I did test that cage door in case I could unstick it and help her stretch her wings and see the world, and maybe invite her back to the alley for a meal.
But in a way, having the cage helped keep things civil. We could just get on with the business of stealing gold lick and counter scraps, of sparrow stalking and balcony viewing, without anything in the way except of course that web of pesky wire. And I'm not sure, but I have this feeling Sandy was happy about the cage in this respect, even if she was probably still very annoyed with the fact she got herself trapped inside and couldn't go on any proper flights without getting that door open. But thwarted by the doors of hindwalkers, it's just the story of our critter lives, isn't it?